Hello and welcome back to my studio. It's Lois here from Lois and Morgana Davidson Art, and today I'm going to be showing you another ink and watercolour painting that I've done doing the inked line work using my homemade feather pen made from a seagull feather that I found on the beach. I quite simply just snipped off the end and then carved the tip into the shape of a nib, sort of splitting it so that it creates a sort of reservoir up inside the quill of the feather. I think traditionally they used to use goose feathers, but this gull feather seems to be fine. I'm using Indian ink. The make that I'm using is Winsor & Newton, but any waterproof Indian ink or any waterproof ink at all will do for something like this. It needs to be waterproof because I'm going to be painting over it once the ink has dried. I've sped the footage up here, obviously, as this process can take quite a while, but I'm simply going to just work away, building up a couple of sort of stylised winter trees, trying to make sure that the branches kind of mesh together, and that will sort of give them some volume, even though I'm just painting them in silhouette with this black ink. And of course you can do a drawing like this with any kind of dip pen, but you can also use waterproof fine liners as well. It's just with waterproof fine liners you'll need a few with slightly different thicknesses of nib. One very fine, maybe one middle-sized and one nice wide one for getting in those really dark areas. With this nib here, I can just change the pressure that I apply and the amount of ink that goes onto the paper, and that will give me my changes in line width and therefore my variations in the way the marks and the lines look. While the ink's still wet, I can drag some of it out with the tip of my palette knife, and that gives me even more interesting marks. Bringing down a few sort of lines to give us our ground plane, just to suggest it really, something and nothing. And that'll do for this line work today. I'm just going to blot off any excess ink with a tissue, and I can use that excess ink and dab a bit of extra texture around the ends of the branches and on the ground. And now it needs to dry completely. As soon as it's totally dry, I shall now create the sunset background. This is going to be a sky practice, trying to use 3 colours, very bold colours, to produce a simple sunset effect. It's yellow ochre, vermilion and indigo will give me the dark areas of my sky and my land, in combination with different sort of mixes of vermilion and yellow ochre. I'll spray it with a water spray. Now I've applied my really rich, almost tube consistency paint, and then turn the board around, spray it again, and you can see the paint running down, softening and diffusing, and I should get a really beautiful, soft but dramatic sky. I'm using Arches rough textured watercolour paper today, and my board's at an angle of about 20 to 30 degrees. So gravity is helping me to paint, especially when I tip and tilt and turn the board like this to get the paint to flow in the directions I want it to. I can then make any adjustments as the paint flows, just to sort of integrate it a bit more, maybe darken up in certain places, maybe encourage it to add a few little shadows here and there. Just making these adjustments while the board is turned and also on a slant or slope, so that gravity is helping to paint. The indigo paint that I'm now applying around the trees and to the foreground in very loose brush strokes is almost tube consistency. In other words, straight out of the tube, very little water. So it's nice and rich, it stays where it's put, and it's not going to move against those wet washes. I've laid my board flat, and now I'm going to just work into that rich paint in the foreground with my palette knife, just to scrape back a little bit of texture here and there, just to create the sort of something and nothing suggested foreground for this very simple beginner-friendly painting. And still using the palette knife, I'm scraping through some of these sky colours carefully at the ends of the branches and in a few places here and there where I'd like to create a few highlights and the trees, which will give them just a little bit more variety, just with some light kind of catching them here and there. Some of these marks will fill in because the sky wash is still quite wet, but a few of these lighter marks will stay lighter and just add, as I say, to the variety of the tangled mass of branches. So these three colours work really, really nicely for a scene as simple and dramatic as this. I've just noticed I've got some water pooling up on the left-hand side of the sky in a sort of an uneven puddle. So tipping it this way gets rid of some of the water. Can you see the water and paint now running over the tape? And I can just dab that off with a tissue. And once the uneven amount of water has been removed, then my washes should now dry nice and smooth without the risk of any sort of nasty marks that will happen if the washes dry unevenly. I'm pretty much done, but I'm just going to add a little bit of the vermilion and the yellow ochre across the ground here and there, just a few dabs, so that you can see that the sky colours are being reflected on the land. Again, just a few marks scraped in with the palette knife. And just before it dries, I've got some ordinary fine ground table salt, and I'm sprinkling a little bit, not too much, across the foreground, and hopefully the little blooms that the salt crystals create in the damp wash will give me the suggestion of a foreground. I now need to leave it to dry completely. And here's the dry painting, and I'm really pleased with this subtle sky. The glow is working really nicely behind the simplicity of the silhouetted trees. I'm going to remove the masking tape. This allows us to see the painting with a clean edge, and it helps us to see whether it looks balanced. And for a simple demonstration, I'm really happy with this. I'm hoping as well that you'll find some interesting transferable skills here that you can apply in your own work, whether it's creating a similar sky or whether it's creating loose inked trees with a dip pen or with fine liners. Hopefully there's something helpful here for you. Let's take a closer look, and you can see where I've etched into the damp wash with the palette knife and how that adds a bit of variety to those branches and twigs, and also where we've got those salt effects. It's a nice, effective and simple foreground created without painting any detail. So I hope you found that helpful. If you did, then please give the video a thumbs up. And if you're new here and you're not subscribed to our channel, I'd love to invite you to do so. It's free to do, and it really helps with our reach here on YouTube. And thank you so much to everybody that supports us on Patreon. We really do appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.